Hey, and we're live already. I'm going to make this one kind of quick. Actually, this is totally impromptu, absolutely nothing scripted, nothing planned out, other than I was just cruising YouTube like a lot of you guys probably do, and I came across the David Blaine video on Joe Rogan on JRE. And awesome interview to begin with, right? But there were some things that David Blaine talked about that were entirely accurate that didn't go into a whole lot of detail. And I was watching this being like, oh man, I wish you were going deeper into the science of what's happening here. So anyway, the purpose of this live broadcast is to explain what happens in an extreme fast, like David Blaine was going through. I'll recap really quick what he was talking about and what happened with that, right? So David Blaine talks to Joe about how for his frozen in time stunt that some of you are probably familiar with, he did some pretty extreme fasting leading up to it and during it, et cetera, et cetera. But he talks about his various experiences with extreme fasting, with longer periods of fast. And one point in particular, I want to make sure that everyone can hear me okay. Some people said the audio is not real good. So, but anyway, if you can't hear me, let me know. But if you can, if audio seems okay, just please let me know. It should be fine. That's why I'm using the earbuds here. So anyway, if you watch the clip, you know exactly what I'm talking about. But if you go to JRE clips, you can check it out later. It starts at like 4 minutes in when he starts talking about it. Okay, so he talks about how the first time he did this, about a week-long fast, and he didn't really, just did it just pure water. Now, I'm not saying that what he did was incorrect. There was nothing about that was incorrect. But he proceeds to talk about how when he was doing a 44-day fast prior to any of this other frozen in time experience, he was very hesitant to break his fast a specific way. Now, what happened was he had a lot of people that were coming up to him and wanting him to take specific vitamins during his fast that were sweetened with sugar and things like that. Well, what he says in that clip is that he does not, he was afraid to take those because he didn't want to mess up his metabolism. He didn't want to mess up his body. He wanted it to be a very strict and very clean, pure fast. So it makes perfect sense. But it begs the question, why would it do that? Why would it mess up your body? And he proceeds to talk about World War II and how when people were coming out of being prisoners of war or anything like that, people would die because they would consume food after an extreme fast and it would throw things off. So here's what is happening. It's called refeeding syndrome. And it's really interesting because while you are in a fasted state, especially for an extended period of time, you have blood levels of electrolytes that actually remain relatively constant. So when you're doing an extreme long fast like that, he's actually right. You should be keeping it like totally neutral and probably not even taking in minerals, right? Why? Like in a shorter fast, like 2 days, 3 days, yeah, take in some minerals. It's not going to harm you. But when you're talking about extreme fasts, what happens is you throw off sort of the natural balance within your body. Okay, so imagine this. Your body is doing whatever it can to rebalance electrolytes. So what it does is it'll pull sodium, potassium, everything like that, and it will put it into the bloodstream, out of tissues, in an effort to maintain plasma levels of these electrolytes. Because if we lose our electrolytes in our bloodstream, we have a serious problem, okay? We can lose some electrolytes in our tissues. It happens when we work out, right? If we have an imbalance of sodium, potassium, we might end up with a little bit of a cramp and everything like that, right? So imagine if you were to have that happen in the bloodstream. It would really throw things off, okay? It could throw off your heart. It could throw off a lot of things. Now, what can happen potentially when you break a fast that is that long and you have something super sugary or something very sweet? What happens is it causes a big spike in insulin, okay? And this big spike in insulin suddenly opens up the cell, okay? And what happens is by law of osmolarity, a lot of the sodium and all the other minerals will flush into the bloodstream. So I want you to imagine it like this for a second, okay? Let's say you have one water balloon that is full of water and another water balloon that is full of water with a bunch of salt and a bunch of electrolytes and things like that, okay? If you were to magically connect those two water balloons together, the water from one water balloon that doesn't have all the electrolytes would flood into the water balloon that does have the salt. Okay, it's called creating an isotonic state, and it's called the law of osmolarity. Water is going to flow where there is some sodium in water, right? So imagine your bloodstream having a balance of lots of salt, lots of potassium, lots of minerals, because your body is creating just, again, this balance, osmosis, osmolarity. Well, as soon as insulin is spiked, the cell doorway is going to open, and a lot of those electrolytes that were in the tissues are going to flood to where there's more. And it can also happen both ways. It all depends on where the fluid balance is. But this is what causes some serious issues. People can go into cardiac arrest. They can go into all kinds of issues with that. Now, I'm not trying to scare people away at all. That's not the point. I'm just explaining the mechanism of action for what he was talking about and how this frozen in time stunt, how he was thrown off, right, with this. So anyway, it goes a little bit further. You may have seen some of my videos recently where I talk about thiamine. Okay, another thing that happens with extreme fasting is very, very serious thiamine deficiencies. Thiamine is you're going to find it in turkey, you're going to find it in chicken, poultry, things like that. Well, what happens is, again, with these longer fasts, thiamine becomes, you become deficient in it. And then all of a sudden you consume some food and you require thiamine for proper glucose metabolism. So now you have glucose that is not being metabolized because you're largely glucose intolerant, in conjunction with an insulin spike, in conjunction with this weird thing happening with your electrolytes. I don't even know what you could call it other than refeeding syndrome. So that is exactly what he's referring to. So I saw a lot of people in the comment section of that Joe Rogan video saying, why wouldn't you have just had some salt? Why wouldn't you have just had some minerals? And I understand why they're saying that. And this isn't to say that they're wrong. It's just when you go on a longer fast, you want to be very, very careful with that. And someone is saying, please define longer fast. By longer fast, I would say anything over a week, okay? So we're talking pretty darn long fasts. We're pretty serious stuff. It's just a lot of people took very keen interest in what he was talking about. So this particular refeeding syndrome that people talk about, we can apply to a smaller degree with shorter term fasts. Okay, that's why I usually talk about the kind of manipulation of sodium, when I talk about not having salt too much right after breaking a fast. Okay, you want to kind of balance it. Anyway, don't take everything I'm saying right now and try to formulate a perfect intermittent fasting plan from it. This is me just explaining some stuff to, again, get the point across. So after World War II, you imagine people going months without food, very little food. Well, the other thing that would happen that was very detrimental is if you're in a true starvation mode, true starvation mode, you're not having any food coming in. And a lot of times people that are in sort of forced starvation situations, prisoners of war, things like that, they're given minuscule amounts of food. So they're not in like the official starvation mode from a fasting perspective. They're in a much more dangerous starvation mode where their metabolism is still trying to process in somewhat of an all or nothing principle. So it's actually more dangerous to try to embark on a 2-month fast but have a little bit of food in the middle than it is to just say, I'm going to go all the way. I think David Blaine said on his 44-day fast that he lost 60 pounds. And throughout other fasts that he was doing, his fasting expert, his fasting doctor that he went to, had claimed that he didn't believe that he had been fasting for so long because he was functioning so well. Well, I mean, that just goes to show he was probably metabolically adapted, fat adapted. So anyhow, I don't want to take up a lot of people's times. I'm happy to answer a couple of questions here, people that are hopping on. I do also want to announce just why there's a lot of people on this broadcast. Tomorrow I have a really cool video series launching, just FYI, called the How to Stay Lean Year-Round series, all about mitochondrial function. So it's got a nutrition protocol that's going to go live tomorrow. Okay, so it's going live at 10 a.m. Pacific time. Okay, then the next day, Thursday. The next day, Thursday, I have the exercise protocol to stay lean year-round. Okay, and then the next day, Friday, we have the supplement protocol to stay lean year-round, and then we move along the line all the way into recovery protocol and then a live broadcast. So anyway, I want to make sure that you guys hop on that because that's going to be really, really cool. It's probably one of the best series that I've ever put together. I'm really stoked on it. So all the people hopping on here, just to kind of recap before I sign off here in a couple of minutes, Joe Rogan obviously talks about fasting all the time. David Blaine was talking about his experience in his frozen in time situation and how he was hallucinating during it. What's interesting is he claims that they gave him a good amount of water during the actual stunt, which is kind of wild because sometimes having water without electrolytes during an extended fast like that can throw things off even more. Again, the important thing to remember is your body does a really keen job of being able to balance things. And I think that's something that I've learned in time too. And of course, always trying to, move through the evolution of this stuff is that your body does a tremendous job of keeping the balance. It knows when it needs to pull electrolytes from given functions that are not critical. I am okay with my leg cramping because I know that electrolytes have been pulled from my leg to go save my heart from cramping, right? So the point in that is not that cramps are good, but the point is that your body will typically allocate the proper minerals to the proper place when it's in a mode of scarcity. So remember that your minerals you're not becoming completely mineral deficient, okay? Although your insulin levels being low is going to make it so that your kidneys expel more water. Yes, you could get dehydrated more, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to lose all your minerals. In fact, you start to lose more minerals in the first day of a fast, and then you start to actually spare them a little bit more. Your body gets a little bit more efficient at sparing those minerals. So I'm going to go ahead and keep this short and simple. Andrew Littlefield, yes, magnesium and potassium are definitely good during a fast. Someone says it's Mr. Denali Man Live. So anyhow, thank you guys. Oh, actually a good question. I just want to answer this. Best ACV cocktail during a fast. This is kind of fun to talk about. Let me mention real quick apple cider vinegar during a fast because this is a perfect thing to talk about. There's different forms of fast, like a true fast when you're not taking anything at all, nothing. That's simple. You don't need a million videos from me to explain that, right? Okay, just don't freaking eat. You may drink a little bit of water, but anyway, point is, there's other things that you can take during what I would consider more casual fasts, even if they're up to 72, 96 hours. Apple cider vinegar is typically one of them. I enjoy taking in apple cider vinegar during a fast because acetic acid puts you in a net energy deficit. That's right. Okay, so when you take in apple cider vinegar, the acetic acid actually feeds the cells as a form of what's called acetate. Okay, this acetic acid, excuse me, I stand corrected there. It's actually straight up acetic acid. So the acetic acid goes into a. My phone rang for a second. Probably going to call back because every time I ignore a call, people tend to just call you right back. So where was I with that? Okay, so when it enters into the cell, it goes through a process where in order to create energy from acetic acid, it actually costs more energy than it actually creates. So it virtually takes that acetic acid and tries to manufacture energy. Okay, it tries to create acetyl coenzyme A out of it. So acetic acid can be part of acetyl coenzyme A. When that happens, it puts you deeper into what is called the AMPK pathway. It puts you deeper into a fast. So literally consuming a couple tablespoons of apple cider vinegar makes you fast deeper, quicker. Pretty cool stuff. Anyhow, I'll just go ahead and just spare you the details on that. Keep this one short. Anyway, that is the reasoning behind the refeeding syndrome that David Blaine and Joe Rogan were talking about. As always, keep it locked here on my channel. Thank you all very, very much for being here. Don't forget, please set a reminder, 10 a.m. Pacific time tomorrow for the Stay Lean Year-Round series that starts. All right, talk to you all soon. If I can ever figure out how to turn this thing off. Where'd it go? Well, I guess I'm still here, guys, because the